Good evening and welcome to another exciting meeting of the Charlton Water and Sewer Commission. Today is June 17th, 2019. And unless Drew or Sue have something to say, there's no one here for public forum. So we'll move right on to the warrants and minutes from Mr. Jennings.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'll make a motion for discussion. Accept the minutes of June 3rd, 2019, as printed.
We have a second on that.
I second.
Any discussion on that? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Abstain.
Unanimous, Sue.
All right. Next, I'll make a motion. We accept the warrants for review as printed as follows. Cosgrove and Blatt, $1,422. WB Mason, $39.99. The Boston Globe, $353.69. Fire Detection Systems, $1,629.21. Law Offices of H, how do you pronounce that?
I'm not sure. Coates?
Coates, $350. Law Office of H. Coates, $500. LaForte Electric, $1,190. WB Mason, $6.57 for a grand total of $5,491.46.
I have a second on that.
I second.
Any discussion? I'd like to discuss this, Coates' attorney. It seems to be he's representing us then, right?
Yes.
Not either of the other two parties.
Correct. They performed the title search for us for the 2 parcels of land
Yeah,
down on Gale Road.
okay. There's different prices.
This is what you approved last meeting.
Yeah.
The
I kinda
Phillips
remember
property
that.
was $350 and the Burns was going to be
Okay.
$500.
Anyone have any other discussion on any of these? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we got
That'll do
more
it.
for us, sir.
Nope,
You're all done.
that's it for me tonight.
Well, our first appointment's not here yet, so we'll move on. And we want to go to sewer pump purchases, Peter?
The grinder pumps? Sure, we can move on to those. So as you know, we keep an inventory of grinder pumps on hand in case a grinder pump fails at the homeowner's residence, we can just change it out. I believe we're down to 3 grinder pumps at this time, and we have approximately 11 control panels. So what was happening before is we were ordering, say, 10 full systems, full upgradable systems at a time, which came with the grinder pump, the float tree system, and the upgraded control panel. That whole package was about $2,500, and so you'd spend about $25,000 at a time. But every time a grinder pump went bad, we didn't have to change the float tree or the control panel if it was already upgraded. So therefore, we have a bunch of control panels sitting on the shelf, down to 3 grinder pumps and maybe, I think it's 1 float tree. So as you'll see, we have a quote attached for 10 grinder pumps, 9 float trees, and 7 disconnect check valves. So this will give us this will allow us to have 10 full upgrade packages as well as 3 extra grinder pumps for pump replacement only. The attached quote shows the cost to be $14,793.92. So if the commission could approve that, we can go ahead and get that ordered.
We have a motion for them, please.
Sure. Make a motion that we purchase the grinder pumps as Peter has suggested and quoted.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion on them? If not, all those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Peter, do you have any idea how many we've done compared to how many more we have yet to do?
We only do them as they fail.
Okay,
So it's not a set number that we do. Since Zach has been here, they're trying to troubleshoot them more. I think past practice was they'd go to a call and just replace the pump. Zach's a little more familiar with them, so he'll go ahead and do some amperage draws and check a few more things out. So I think the number of pumps that we've been replacing has decreased since Zach's come on board. So I think the last time we ordered those 10 was just over a year ago. So we're probably doing, maybe replacing 1 a month average.
we just automatically replacing it with a new pump, or are we still trying to fix the old ones?
We
if
don't
possible?
rebuild any of the old ones.
No, not anymore.
No, so if it's a
Okay.
pump issue, we just go ahead and install the new one, and the old ones are set aside.
Which leads us back to the first question I asked you. Do you have any idea how many have been replaced with the new pumps and how many are still the old pumps?
No, I don't.
Okay, I didn't know if you had any.
I mean, like the old systems and everything, I don't.
Are we halfway there, do you think?
I would have to guess at least halfway there,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Purchase and sale agreement, for limited power of attorney for the Phillips property, and then later on, the Burns property.
Sure, so these are gonna follow pretty much the same thing. So we have a purchase and sales agreement for the Phillips property that has gone back and forth between Attorney Cosgrove and their attorney. And what I have attached here is not signed by anybody yet, but I believe is in final form and ready to be signed upon your approval. So if you reviewed it and you're willing to enter into it, town council has recommended a motion to be made just in case something pops up with it, where you approve the purchase and sale agreement with such revisions as myself approves after consultation with legal counsel. And any changes I make to this still have to come before you because you have to sign it. This doesn't give me the authority to sign anything. It just allows me to make some minor tweaks if there's some discussions to be had.
Yep.
So if you could approve that with that caveat, I can go ahead and get a clean copy from Attorney Cosgrove tomorrow and have that ready for you guys to sign. Because he's also asking that you sign the limited power of attorney for himself so that he can represent you in the closing. And that has to be notarized. So I'll go ahead and put all this stuff together, put the notarized limited power of attorney with Mary, and probably do the same with the Burns. So if you guys have some time tomorrow to stop in and see Mary and sign that stuff, that'd be great.
Make a motion to approve purchase and sale agreement with such revisions as Superintendent Boyer approves after consultation with legal counsel concerning the Phillips property on Gale Road.
Second.
Second, okay. Jen, any discussion on any of this? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
One question, Peter, we've got quite a few, some attorney fees here associated with this.
Yes.
On some of the other stuff, we're getting a certain portion back in grant money. Does that apply to the attorney fees as well?
No, it only applied to the purchase of the property and the survey.
Okay.
There's a small portion for some other small costs, but not the bulk of the attorney fees for the closing costs. The money that we're paying for the attorney fees to close on the property is actually coming out of our grant for the water master plan. So if you could also do a motion, Russ, for the limited power of attorney, or somebody.
What do you need?
That motion we had was for both, was it not?
No,
Oh,
one was for the
do one
Burns.
at a time?
Yep.
Okay.
Make a motion, we sign the limited power of attorney as printed for both the Phillips and, what's the other?
Burns.
Burns property. Well, this is actually done, there's two of them, right?
Yes.
So you want two separate motions?
No, they're consistent, so I think you can do them both with one
Okay.
motion. It's fine.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I second.
Any other discussion on that? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Do you need all 5 signatures?
No, 3 will be enough.
Okay.
But- So that should be fine.
Now, make a motion to approve the purchase and sale agreement with such revisions as Superintendent Boyer approves after consultation with legal counsel regarding the Burns property on Gale Road.
Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion on that one? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 So the Burns purchase and sale, we actually have a signed copy from them,
Okay.
but just keep the motion consistent with town council recommended, and that we'll be able to have executed tomorrow. We do have 2 warrants. One is for the deposit that we have to pay as part of the purchase and sales agreements, and the second warrant is for the remaining amount to pay for the Burns property, because we're hoping to close on that next week, before the end of June 30th. So if you guys could approve those, that'd be great. That way there we can get the signed purchase and sales agreements with the $5,000 deposit checks over to them and pretty much have that done. And
You need a
then-
motion or just?
Yes, I
signatures?
think a motion for both separately would be
Both
great.
separate motions.
Yes.
Okay. Make a motion that we agree to pay the $10,000 for the Gale property, Gale Road property as printed.
5,000 to Phillips and 5,000 to Burns for the deposits.
What is it? Oh, yes, okay, sorry. 5,000 to Robert and Beverly Burns, and 5,000 to James Phillips and Joyce Lonan Phillips.
Second.
Is that good? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Make a motion, we pay the $103,000 to Robert and Beverly Burns
I second.
as
Second.
printed for the purchase of the property at Gale Road.
Okay, any discussion on that? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. One more.
And again, those funds are coming from our water capital improvement receipt reserve for appropriation that town meeting approved at the annual town meeting, so. The Phillips one, we're not gonna do until after July 1st because the grant won't reimburse us until, for any money spent in FY '19. So we won't be able to make, that. The PNS shows that the $5,000 deposit will be paid on July 2nd. So,
Okay, are you all set with this?
yes,
If not,
actually, no,
we'll leave this number 4 till a little bit later, and we'll move on to Veolia and speak with Zach Donahue.
Hello.
I want to cover some of the key points of the May MOR. Is this the first one?
go for it.
Second? A little bit?
There you go.
Yeah? Not a lot. Hello?
Blue lights are on. Can you turn the mics up for the mics at the table?
There you go. Is that better?
Oh,
All right. So I'll cover some of the key points from the May MOR. For safety, there were no injuries. The training topic was ergonomics. For plant personnel, our operator Drew Allard took and passed his grade 2 wastewater license today.
Yay.
For compliance, we had some more of the zinc exceedances. We ran 3 zincs, they were all above the limit, and it caused the monthly average to be above the limit as well. We're planning on running a sulfide chemical addition trial at the plant. This method of adding sulfide prior to COMAG has been very successful in Sturbridge. It lowered the concentrations of zinc as well as copper. And it's a pretty straightforward trial. You just flow proportional paste some sulfide-based chemical into the plant. So we're gonna give that a shot. So we'll see. Hopefully that does the trick. In Sturbridge, they really had to make a significant reduction in zinc in order to meet their permit, and they were able to using this sulfide. So where we only have to go, a couple parts per billion, that should be a good option for us to try out. So it doesn't really cost us anything to try it out. So In May, we ran our second quarterly toxicity testing. One of our limits, the NOEC, the no observed effect concentration, didn't pass. Due to the small size of the Katy Brook, where the facility discharges, we have a very strict limit. It's a 93. The facility has about a 75% pass rate historically with this toxicity test. And it may be due to high ammonia levels. There's an acute test and a chronic test, and both the acute and the chronic had excellent over 100% survival. The failure was due to low reproduction rates. And this test is a test where they take some of the effluent from the facility and they take some of the receiving water and they mix them together at different concentrations, and they actually add a species to it to observe the species and see if there's any signs of toxicity. So we have Serradaphnia dubia, which is a water flea. So it's kind of one of those things that, you know, it's a tough test because of the fact that you're dealing with a living thing, and there can be variances just because the species are stronger one time than the other. So we're retesting right now, but again, it was above 100% survival, just lower reproduction rates. So I mentioned ammonia as a possible cause for the failure, because historically the results show that as the water temperatures are a little bit cooler, when ammonia removal isn't as great, we're more likely to fail than when the water temperatures are up. So and something that I've noticed that's a little bit concerning is the influent BOD coming into the plant is a little bit higher. The bugs in wastewater treatment plants, the BOD treating bugs are more dominant than the bugs that treat ammonia. So when you have an increase in BOD go into the plant, the bugs kind of shift to treat more BOD and less of the ammonia. So over the last month or so, we've seen an increase in what we've usually have for ammonia. We're still under the limit, but the concentrations of ammonia did go up. As far as the influent BOD coming into the plant, to give you an idea of what the concentrations are, in 2016, our average BOD daily pounds per day was 502. 2017, that goes up to 650. In 2008, it was 767 pounds per day. And in 2019, our daily average is 922. So we are seeing increased BOD. One of the big sources of BOD coming into the plant is the brewery. Looking at the results from what the brewery tests, they test weekly. We've seen a pretty drastic increase in the BOD that they're discharging. Over the last month or so, it's around double what the BOD coming into the plant, or what they were discharging was last year. So I'm going to keep a close eye on that, as well as the ammonia.
So it's doubled just from that one user?
Yes.
Theirs is doubled.
Yeah, and in most, specifically in breweries, the amount of BOD discharged is the main concern, because the brewery is obviously a biological process. So when they discharge, you know, some of the values, if you calculate the amount that they discharge to into the sewer system based on the gallons and the concentrations, the majority of what's coming into the plant is actually coming from the brewery, based on the loading, the calculations, gallons to the concentrations. So a discharger like that, if you see a big increase in BOD, that's a big increase. It's not just like double household concentrations. So it's something that I'm gonna look into. I may reach out to my contact at the brewery and discuss it further with them. But that's something that I kind of, you know, have been thinking about recently. So it's the results have just started to come in for that. So I'll look into it.
So, McClure Engineering, they do their sampling at Treehouse, and they're aware of it, and Chris has reached out to me to discuss the high levels that they've seen, and they're trying to figure out what's going on with their processing and what's changed, and they're working on getting that lower back down to where, that number back down to where it was. And they're also working with a company to start their pre-treatment process. So their initial plan was to have that, I think, to be in installation of their pre-treatment process by July 1st. I'm not sure if that's still on target, but they definitely want that pre-treatment process to be up and running by the end of this year. And their goal is to get down to hazardous waste levels, so. Household hazardous waste,
Yeah.
household
Yeah.
waste levels, so.
Yeah.
That's their goal.
And that should help the treatment plant significantly. So,
Unfortunately, when you have a high level from them and you also have a holiday weekend and we see high levels of ammonia coming from the two rest areas, both of those at the same time have quite an impact. So unfortunately, we see an average daily flow of 220,000 gallons per day, or even if it's up to 300, the strength of that waste is probably like treating 600,000 gallons per day of household waste.
yeah, and that concentration can change, you know, over the week. You could have, you know, normal levels, and then just over a weekend, a significant change, and then it starts to taper back off as the week goes on. So,
But I do know that a priority for the brewery is to install that pretreatment system. That they're definitely working with the engineers now to finalize the design and get that going by the end of this year.
maybe, you know, what they're brewing, because I believe that what they're brewing at the time can have different concentrations. On to the treatment plant O&M. On the 15th, mixer located in the sludge holding tank number 2 failed due to damaged wiring inside the tank. I believe it just failed from, you know, over time. It may not be anything wrong with the mixer itself. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with the mixer itself, but the wiring is damaged and will need to be repaired. I have an electrician on site today and tomorrow doing some of the repair work for the lightning strike, and they're going to take a look at it and see what it's going to take to fix the wiring. So. Pump station activities, all the station alarms were tested. The full load generator tests were completed. The MTAs were sampled on May 2nd and May 27th. Just a little side note, the pump station activities. When we had the power outage, when was that, Friday? Friday, we had a good portion of the town out without power. One of the transfer switches at the Vine Street pump station, that had failed. It failed to transfer over. We had an electrician come in and take a look at it. They think that there's a component with the transfer switch that needs to be repaired. Not the whole thing needs to be replaced, but just a component. They think it should be pretty straightforward, but in the meantime, that station will not transfer over automatically. We'd have to have an electrician. If we had an issue with a power loss or the service coming into the pump station, if we had an issue with that, we'd have to get an electrician over there to wire it directly in order to get the station to run. But I've been in contact with our normal generator service company, and they're gonna be coming out to check it out, so. Collection system activities, we had a SSO, a sewer, sanitary sewer overflow on the 13th. There was a force main break at the cow tunnel on Old Worcester Road. It's estimated that less than 25 gallons of sewer made its way into the ground. This happened, there was a couple members of Albanese Brothers digging in the area, and they discovered it. I don't know if it was kind of an issue that was pre-existing, or if something that they were doing, may have triggered that, but it was repaired promptly. For grinder pump calls, on the 5th, 208 Sunset Drive, there was a high-level alarm. It was stuck floats due to a slight grease buildup. This is an upgraded system. On the 19th, 62 Hollywood Drive, it was high-level and trip breaker. The pump wouldn't run and the breaker kept tripping. It was an old system, so LaForte Electric was called in to do an upgrade. On the 22nd, 122 Glen Echo Shore Road, high-level alarm, stuck floats due to a slight grease buildup. This was an upgraded system. You may see the majority of the calls that we get are stuck floats due to a slight grease buildup. Doesn't necessarily mean that the people are dumping a ton of grease down their drains, but naturally there's some grease buildup, and the start float is located at the surface of the water level, and that's the one that's always kind of sitting where the grease would sit. And since it is sticking out of the water, it kind of accumulates grease. It's kind of a vulnerable point of the design where a slight grease buildup on those wires is just enough to cause the float not to start. So that's why you'll see a lot of the float stuck, and it's a pretty quick fix. We just pull up the float and clean off the grease and clean any grease that's in the wet well. 31 Sunset, high-level alarm. The pump wouldn't run. The breaker kept tripping. This was also an old system, so LaForte Electric was called in to do an upgrade. 59 North Sturbridge Road. It's a high-level alarm. There's a faulty float there. We thought it was due to a grease buildup on the float, like most, but we got a couple calls for the same thing. So we ended up going out there today and changing out the float in question and replaced the check valve that we noticed was leaking back. That's an upgraded system as well. On the 30th, 237 Sunset Drive, high-level alarm, stuck floats due to a slight grease buildup, and that was an upgraded system. For dig safes, there were 4 dig safes for the month of May. And then, as requested, there's a price breakdown for the updated backup SCADA computer for the wastewater treatment plant. As you can see by the pricing, that the majority of the cost is for the licensing and the software. Again, that secondary computer would prevent loss of treatment or view of the facility or control of the facility if something were to happen to the older system that we're currently using.
On these dig safes, what's your responsibility? Just for the sewage, or what about the water piping that might be underground, like on Stafford Street? Do you handle that, or who does, I guess, is the question.
We don't mark out the drinking water supply.
So that would be Southbridge
Yes.
responsibility to do that?
Yep, we mark out the force main and the gravity, and roughly like where it ties, where the homeowner's line ties into the street. But we don't go out, we don't mark out on private property.
Right.
So.
Do you mark the road, or do you tell DigSafe where to mark the road, and then they mark the, who actually does the marking of the road?
We do.
You do, okay,
Yeah.
so when I see marks on the road, it's not necessarily DigSafe that put them there, it's other people.
Correct. We
You know,
mark
National
out.
Grid, or you, whatever. so-
Yeah, I mean, it's, kind of goes out to anybody who would have something in that area, and, you know, we go and mark out our sewer where the area is in question, and, the other services will go out and mark their lines, or their utilities.
DigSafe is just kind of the middleman then.
Yeah,
Okay, I never
Yeah,
given
they
any
relay.
thought before.
they relay the information.
Anybody got anything for Zach? Do you have any more for us, Zach?
Pete, do we have to vote on that, or is that just something that,
For the SCADA computer?
yeah,
Sure, I mean, if they want to move forward
I mean,
with it, and this is the price, they have to vote to approve it, otherwise we can't move forward.
yeah, I mean, it's completely up to you guys, it's not something that the facility needs at the moment, it's just something that, you know, is, the facility has a lot of redundancy, and that's kind of something that's required by the DEP, they want to see redundancy, so if something were to go wrong.
It is strictly a backup computer, right?
Yeah, I
If
mean,
we
it
bought it
would,
tomorrow, wouldn't be doing,
we'd
put it away
probably
in
set it
closet?
up, we'd probably set it up in the office upstairs, so they're not side by side.
It would give them that, so right now, the current computer is in the downstairs lab area, which is right behind our office. Veolia has their own office kind of upstairs in the back corner of the plant. If Zach was to get this, I think that's why the labor cost to install it is so high, correct? Because you need to
Yeah,
get all the
It's in
All
a
the,
different location.
all the wires run up to their office. So that way there, if they want to make changes or if they want to see what's going on the SCADA computer, they can do it from their office instead of having to go downstairs into the lab. So it kind of, it's a little bit of, you know, scales, a little bit of economy to be able to have them do it from their office, but it also gives them that redundancy as well. If the current SCADA computer goes down, that one's still operational. So,
It's up to you guys.
I'm just thinking, can we just replace some software, or do we need a whole new computer? I mean, what's the story there?
Well,
Our choices, our options.
well, if something were to fail, it would be the computer itself. So the computer would be necessary. The computer without the software is just a computer sitting there, so it wouldn't really have any, wouldn't have any benefit to us, just without any software loaded on it.
Do we have to buy software to go with a new computer, or can we have something that we can use as with the old computer? Does that software
I mean,
still have any value?
I could look into if the software could be transferred. From what I was told, the version the software is running in on the SCADA computer right now is an older version, so I don't know if we could put the new computer with this software and transfer over a license. I'm not sure. Just know that a lot of facilities will have, you know, a backup control system if something were to fail. But again, it's completely up to the town to decide whether they feel that that's
Opinions here
worth the
from the rest
spend.
of the board on this?
Well, if we could find out that, if you could transfer it, I think that would be helpful to begin with.
Okay.
And I know Rob had some questions too, so I think we should table it till.
So the main reason we're bringing this up now is this, again, it's the last meeting of the fiscal year.
Oh, that's right.
In our capital improvement line item, which starts out at $100,000 annually for unknown capital instances that might come up. So far, we've only spent, we have $67,000 left. And with, not that I'm just saying let's go spend it, but I think because, again, redundancy, I think is a good thing for what we have, so there's no lapse in operation if something were to go down. Not that we have to spend the money right away, but if you approve it, we can encumber the funds from this fiscal year and use them next fiscal year. So I can't, without an approval, I can't do that. So I will, if you could approve it, doesn't mean we have to spend it, but I can at least encumber it for, so we're not, so if you make the decision in July, we're not digging into our new $100,000 in case something big happens where we have a big expense next year.
Do we not get to carry that $67,000 over the next year?
No, that gets turned back and it shows up as retained earnings when they certify what we've spent for the year. So we get it back, we just can't use it next year. You start each year with the approved budget.
Okay.
So it's not, it doesn't go away,
How much money are we talking about here?
It's,
$8,200. It is what the quote is. And again, so I guess what I'd ask is if you're gonna consider it, and I realize you still want more information from Zach, approve it, and we won't spend it. I won't spend it until you give me final approval at a follow-up meeting when Zach gets you more information. That way there we can encumber the funds. Will Donna let us encumber those funds without an approval? Probably not. So. Or again, if it's not a priority, it's not a priority at this time, and we can just let it die and we'll move on. We let this go away and we'll address it when something happens.
I, personally, I'm fine with kicking the expenditure can down the road. Just, I think we're pretty thrifty as the board goes. I'm fine with the money being dropped back into retained earnings for this year without encumbering the money, knowing that we're probably gonna be very similar in our policies and procedures next year. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's just me, and I think that if we do find out more information, that would potentially lower the cost.
Yeah.
And
Alright.
that's just me.
So if we were to approve it pending more information,
Mhm.
we could then rescind it if we didn't.
You wouldn't have to rescind, I wouldn't act on it until. Like Mr. Jennings said, past practice has been that that line item has not been spent down to zero. But, again, the concern, we can always, if there was to be some type of large main break that costs $30,000 or $40,000, we could always go to special town meeting and replenish it at that time also. So that's fine, we can just kind of move forward. Like I said, it'll come back as retained earnings, and you can put it into the stabilization account and do what we need with it. And we'll just have Zach continue to work on getting some more information to really narrow down what that cost is and see if we can get it trimmed down any further.
Who do we buy the Dell computer actually from?
They buy it.
Who would?
The Harbor Controls. So they would.
So this company would purchase the whole package?
Yes.
Yep.
Just everything? Okay.
So I know I asked this question last time, if they're readily available. Now, I know they're not readily available, that we can go to Walmart and buy them, but are they readily available to this company? Like, if you were to call them and say, hey, we had a breakdown, can we get a new computer in 48 hours, 3 weeks, 2 months?
I asked them that question today. They said it would be about a week before we'd have the computer and we'd have visibility of the plant again.
Now, just throwing, you maybe don't know the answer to this,
Yep.
but let's just say you had a Dell 5060,
Yep,
like I gave it to you.
yep.
Then could you install all the software on it? Would this company do that? Or are
Yeah.
they just a package deal and they'd say, no, we won't install it on?
I've worked with them for some time now. I think if we were to supply a computer, they wouldn't have an issue with doing the install and the software. I have an idea of, I looked up myself what the computer cost with the specs that were spec'd out, and the markup wasn't, I wouldn't think it was very significant. It was a couple $100. But that's always an option as well.
So is there any downside to encumbering the funds? The way I'm understanding it now, correct me if I'm if I'm wrong about it, we're gonna get a $100,000 line item on the 2020 budget.
Yep.
Now, we've got, did we spend 67 or do we have 67 left? Left, so, okay, so, and if we take, just put a reserve on that amount for the time being, we still get 100,000 next year, and if we decide to purchase this, it's already coming out of last year, so to speak.
Correct.
Right now, this fund, so that, I just don't, it doesn't seem like there's a downside. We're not spending it, we're just reserving it to be spent if we decide to go that way.
Yep.
So, with that, I think we should, reserve the money for the time being, encumber the funds and make a decision later, because if we do decide to spend it in July, it'll come out of last year's amount, not the current year's amount. So, does anybody else see it that way too?
That's what I asked, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I-
So,
I mean, I can understand your way of thinking, but, townwide, if every board did that, then naturally, you can understand the amount of money that we'd have reserved that wasn't technically going back into the fund. So personally, the way I feel is just, and again, it's just me.
is there any time limit on this reserving of the funds?
Yes, has to be done by I think it's the first week in July.
The first week, so we've only got a week to make a decision. Would that include our next meeting?
No, I think the town,
July 8th, so.
I think the finance director needs them before that.
Other than that-
Again, it's not that large of an item, so I don't think it's gonna, if you wait, it's definitely not gonna break the bank next year.
Yeah, okay,
So-
so I'm inclined to go back to Russ's way of thinking
that's
on this, so. If it were at least July 30th or something, I'd say, let's,
Well, no, if you encumber it, you have all next fiscal year to spend it,
the whole year.
yes. Well,
She just wants to know how much we're gonna put aside.
no, but once it's encumbered, it has to be used, is it 3 months or 6? She doesn't want it to get carried out the whole year, she just wants, I believe it's maybe 3 months. And then depending what's going on, she might give you a little more lead time, depending on what the situation is.
And also, just throwing this out there, if it were a primary computer, I'd probably feel totally different about it. Being that it's a secondary backup, if we're gonna do a backup, I'd just say, okay, next year we'll spend the money
Yeah,
on a
can I ask
backup.
a question? I'm just wondering, so that $100,000 that we get every year, historically, have we always had $60,000, $70,000, $50,000 left over, or is that money
haven't.
usually spent?
I haven't paid attention to it.
You don't, okay.
For that long.
Okay.
My guess is the way,
And we have
the way the board has
$60,000, $70,000
been,
left every year.
the board's been consistently smart with their money.
Yes,
So I think
typically it
it's
does.
probably 60,000 would be an average of what gets returned
Okay.
of that
So I mean, it
100.
wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if we,
But they've also had that capital line item budget was also up at $380,000 before I started because they had, it was inflated to do actual capital improvements that never got done. So we're doing capital improvements, just funding them differently, so we're not carrying that money in our operating budget.
Right.
And we'll just fund the project by project from our retained earnings. So it's hard to know. So I'm guessing routinely, the board's probably spent $40,000 to $50,000 annually from that line item for capital improvements. And again, some of the other repairs, the smaller repairs, get taken out of the O&M account that you have also. And that's, the way I try and differentiate is if it's an operating repair that is going to happen more than once a year, take it out of the O&M account as a regular cost of doing business. If it's not an annual, or if it's not a routine maintenance, take it out of capital, just to try and keep things a little bit separate so we can track it and understand the difference.
And this would be offline for about a week.
If the computer that we are currently using, if that were to fail, yeah, it'd probably be around a week before we get a new computer on site and the software installed and everything hooked up and ready to go.
would that be a catastrophe to be a week without a computer over there? I mean, I'm just
I
not
mean,
sure.
The facility definitely takes, daily inputs. Would the place be in flames by day 10? I don't think so. would we see a violation because of it? You know, maybe, I don't know.
So some processes can be overruled and run by panels
Yeah.
to run the pumps and some other stuff, but
Main equipment.
the sensors and what the SCADA reads for the sensors and stuff like that, to automate the system, Zach won't be able to get that data because the computer won't be there to give it to him.
I have some readouts, you know, locally where the probes or the sensors are, but all I can see is the value. I can't do anything with it or make any adjustments. The stuff that I would be able to probably make changes to is the larger equipment that are on VFDs where the equipment can be turned over to, you know, run in manual mode where you can adjust the set points. But a lot of the facility, the set points change throughout the day as the flows increase or parameters change in order to give the best treatment, so.
I'm gonna make a motion that we put this pending on reserve, is that how you wanna say it? How do I say it?
Cover the funds.
Encumber the funds for 8,200, so we can have a discussion on this when Rob is here.
Have a second on that? Can I second it? I think
Yeah,
so.
no, chair can second it,
I'll
sure.
second it then.
Who seconded?
Yeah. I
Paul.
will. What is the chance we could spend the money and buy this new computer but not need it for 3 or 4 years, at which point when we need it, it's obsolete before we've used it? You know, because that's asking you to look into a
My
crystal
issue
ball,
with the
but
whole computer thing is,
Right.
you know, to buy it, that's why I was wondering how long you would be down, how big of a catastrophe it would be.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you're gonna be down
it's,
for a week and it's not a huge ordeal, then, yeah, I would think that we'd wanna buy a computer, you know, when ours is either really on the fritz, or
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's,
And then buy a new.
then buy a new one.
Yeah.
That's what I just think we need to think about it.
I mean, it's definitely, I mean, there's a possibility that the computer lasts, you know, the computer that's there lasts 4 or 5 years. There's a possibility that it lasts another week, you know, it's, you know, that's.
How old is the computer that
It's,
currently
it's like 4 years old, I believe.
4 years old?
Yeah, which the normal household computers, the lifespan they say is around 4 years, but where this computer is not your, you know, homeowner computer, it may last longer than that because the quality of the product is a little bit better. But as most things today, you know, they're not made to last as long as they did back, you know, 5-10 years ago, so.
Well, I think the software is the one of the big components anyways, and that's with the licensing agreement, and you have to figure that out
Yeah.
before we do
Yeah, I mean,
anything.
if we did get the spare computer and we kept it on site without the software activated, I mean, it would cost, you know, I don't know the exact amount, it would cost, you know, a little bit less, but, you know, in the meantime, there'd be no use for the computer, whereas if it was set up, you know, we could be using it for, you know, control of the facility. So it's, you know, it's redundancy, but it also has a use in the meantime. So it's completely up to you guys. It's just, you know, like I said, the facilities, wastewater facilities are riddled with backup and, you know, redundancy, you know, multiple holding tanks, multiple EQ tanks, multiple options for screening, more than one RBC, more than one secondary clarifier, more than one COMAG system, so, you know, everything has redundancy, and, you know, granted, a lot of that stuff would be a lot harder to get up and running within a week if something were to happen, but, you know, it is something that we don't have redundancy on, so it's up to you guys whether you feel that the need is there to have it.
Well, we got a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion on it? Jen, would you like to give the selling points for your motion?
I think we pointed them all out.
Okay,
I'm just saying we put it in, we've got it out there on
Encumbered funds.
hold. It's in encumbered funds.
we still have time to make a decision, and if we do, at least it's gonna come out of the 2019 budget instead of 2020 budget. That'll remain whole. I don't see a downside to it, so, anyway, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
So we have 2 and 2, so it doesn't pass.
No action taken,
No.
right? Okay. So one of the concerns for the treatment plan is our NIPD's permits has been expired, and we were concerned, discussion, EPA, DEP, about putting a nitrogen limit on treatment plants in the Long Island watershed district, which they say we drain all the way down to Long Island Sound. So EPA, DEP had a meeting on June 7th that I went to out in Springfield, where they talked about the Long Island watershed and who contributes to it. Connecticut's done a lot of work for nitrogen removal in their state, and nitrogen, and Connecticut's starting to push, saying, we've done all this work, we spent all this money, yet all the water flowing from up north is still making things bad in Long Island Sound. It's not our fault. So EPA, DEP are looking at putting nitrogen limits on wastewater treatment plants in Massachusetts and also further north, because it also goes up to Vermont. So luckily for us, because our plant is less than 1 million gallons per day, they're not going to put a limit on us at this time. What they're going to ask us to do is optimize the treatment processes for nitrogen removal with current infrastructure. So I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is in the spring, we brought up the alkalinity control improvement that we talked about, and while it was a big chunk of change, the Headworks analysis identified that as helping our ability to treat. A drop in alkalinity is part of the reason why we had some ammonia exceedances over a year ago, and that was identified. So if we can get that alkalinity under control, then all of a sudden, it helps with that. Sure. And and we were concerned that a new nitrogen limit might have a larger cost to us. So I think with now knowing that we're not going to have to start a new treatment process for nitrogen, I think we can look and see this as one possible upgrade to continue to consider and move forward. And again, discuss it again in the fall as we come to special town meeting, and maybe go there in the fall for funding for that. And then discuss maybe whatever else we can do on a smaller scale to look at optimizing nitrogen removal at the same time. So luckily that shouldn't be, we won't be getting a nitrogen limit, and we should be able to move forward with what we're doing. Change some things around. Zach's pretty good at, looking at the plant, seeing the treatment processes, and trying to work on efficiencies to get it working that little bit better, and treating it more efficiently without having to do a lot, much major changes, so.
I mean, with that said, we may not have a limit initially, but the way things work is it's kind of on the horizon, so it may be something that we have to it's probably something that we're gonna have to try and optimize with what we have, but down the road in permits to come, we may start to see a limit imposed. Whether we can meet that limit with what we have, or whether we have to start addressing it, in forms of upgrades, we'll have to see what they impose on us. And like I told Pete, we don't test directly for total nitrogen right now, but we test for it indirectly. With a couple of our parameters, you add them together, that gives you a total nitrogen. So I'm gonna look into that data and see what we're seeing for total nitrogen levels in the facility now, so we can get an idea of where we need to be.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
So do I have to,
Oh, go
do I have to send back all the office furniture I ordered with the end of year money? Office furniture and pencils?
Was there massage chair and stuff? Keep that.
No, coins.
If I recall
I'll be
correctly,
down tomorrow.
we're on to new business and going to talk about the Insurance Advisory Committee.
Yes, so the town has what's called an Insurance Advisory Committee that's made up of members from each, I think there's one member from each union, a member from the non-union personnel, a member from the group of the retirees who are affected by it. So any time the town considers making changes to the health insurance or any other insurances that affect the personnel, the Insurance Advisory Committee gets to meet with the administration and talk about how it's gonna affect them and yes or no, if they're in favor of it or not. So I believe the clerical union had an open position for that, and Sue's interested in serving on it. They meet once a month. We just wanted to present it to you and make sure you're okay with her serving in that capacity and maybe being out of the office for 1 hour a month to serve that purpose.
Is there a limit to the number of people that the Insurance Advisory Committee will take?
Yeah, I believe it's one person per member. I think Sue said she's gonna share it with Eric, so they might alternate which meetings they go to based on
Okay.
availability. But I believe it's one member per union.
Okay, do I hear a motion here to allow Sue to take on this position?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on, if not, please confirm it by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Great.
More work, you're welcome, Sue.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've talked about Skater enough. We're up to
Yes.
water line construction update. And Peter, why don't you just go right through them all?
Sure. So we'll start off with Berry Corner Road. The water main and service laterals have all been installed and pressure tested and passed. I think they're finalizing one last portion on Eleanor Lane. But everything on Berry Corner Road and Each Foot Road is pressure tested and passed. And Ludlow has currently started installing the water line services on private property to the residences. I believe they might have 8 or 10 done on Berry Corner Road. They had 3 crews going up on H Foot Road today. I don't know why they jumped, but they jumped up to H Foot Road and they had 3 crews and 3 hammers going at the same time, so I don't think they were making much progress. They talked about having 1 crew go back down to Berry Corner Road just to try and continue to make progress while the other 2 are up top on H Foot trying to hammer the ledge, so.
A lot of ledge up there, huh?
There's a lot of ledge, it's a lot of hard ledge, and they're trying to hammer it with smaller machines, because they're going on the private property, so they don't want to take the big machines with the big hammers, and that won't, they'll have to clear 20 feet of trees in order to get to onto the property, so they're trying to use the smaller machines, not leave as big of an impact on the private property, and it's just kind of slow. It's slow going right now. But, they're continuing to move forward and just kind of peck away at it as they go. The school loop, Albanese Brothers has completed the water line on Old Worcester Road, minus 2 culverts they have to cross. There's one, I believe it's a 72-inch corrugated metal pipe that they have to cross. They have to shut the road down and actually divert the water up and over the road in order to replace that. It's a catch-22. They were waiting for school to get out because they're not going to be able to open that road once they close it, so we didn't want the residences to have to drive the kids to the end of Old Worcester Road to get the bus, so we asked them to keep it closed. And we asked them to just wait to do that until school's out. But now school's out, they jumped right over to Mugget Hill Road. So now that they're on Mugget Hill Road, I think they're going to try and get that done as soon as they can, and then maybe put 1 crew. Then Old Worcester Road's kind of a bypass right now, so I don't think they can't close Old Worcester Road at this time. So they're going to work on Mugget and try and get that portion done, probably jump over to Old Worcester Road after, and try and get that done, and then do laterals at the same time while the road is closed. So they're continuing to move. Again, they have probably 3 full crews working, going at it. They started at the intersection of Mugget Hill Road and Main Street today. It was a little bit of a mess because they didn't close the road, so they were trying to allow traffic 1 lane going by, and it was pretty narrow up there at the intersection where they had to grab that first stick of pipe. So this morning, 8 o'clock, it was It was a little congested, but I believe they worked through it. And they also had another crew starting down at the Heritage School parking lot, so they're working their way out from there. And I believe they had a third crew on Old Mugget Hill Road trying to finalize that as well, so they're working and going after it. The Route 169 pump station, National Grid dropped power from the utility pole, and I'm currently just waiting for them to install the meter to get power to the pump station. Once they do that, we then go at RH White, and the United building can go ahead and come in and start initiate the startup procedure for the pump station and get that going. So hopefully that will be up and running and completed by middle of July. So that's still moving forward, a little bit slow, but it's moving forward. Bay Path and Overlook Pump Stations, Albanese has submitted the drawings to Kleinfelder for review and approval. Once Kleinfelder approves the design drawings for the 2 pump stations, it'll get sent to United. Pump stations will get built. They're planning on those being delivered sometime September, October, and being installed by the end of the year. So, Trolley Crossing Road, the water main and laterals have been installed. They flushed the system, pressure tested, and chlorinated and sampled for bacteria, and everything else all passed. So that project's just about done. They're off the road. The only thing they have to do is some final cleaning up on the sidewalks, repave the sidewalks that they installed the line under, and they'll be good to go. So, and the Bufferville Public Water Supply, Advantage Enterprises was on site last week creating the new access paths that you approved at your last meeting to get to the property from Burns, to get to the wells through the Burns property. He cut the access road in. Unfortunately, it's all loomy material, and it's not nice gravel material like was on the Phillips property. So where he cut is pretty slick right now, because it's, with the rain and stuff, it hasn't dried out. So it's not really as passable as I'd like it to be, but I'm not sure. The only way to do it and do it correctly is to muck out what's there and bring in a bunch of good material. And until we're ready to do the full road build-out, I don't think we need, I don't want to spend the money now at this time, in case when we go through site plan to have that designed, something changes a little bit, and the road gets moved or something else gets changed. So I think for what it is now, it's good, it's clear, it's a good initial look at what the access path could be. And the engineer might say, yeah, this is great, it works good, and this is what we're going to build from here and make this work. And again, with the trees gone, maybe it'll dry out if we don't get some rain, and it'll be a little bit more passable in the near future. But I was up there today, we were able to access it through the Army Corps property, which we still have the easement with, so there's a couple ways to get there. But, as you know, we have an annual grant. The Water Master Plan grant is on an annual fiscal year basis with the DEP. It initiated, I believe, we're in 2018, so we're in 2000, it initiated in 2017, 2018. So that'd be FY18 was the first year we had it. We spent some money with Beta to do their initial engineering work, to go consecutive, and for them to develop the programs that we need, so that if we decide to go consecutive, DEP will see that we're actually ready to become an actual water department, such as cross-connection programs and meter read programs and all those other programs that you need to have. At the end of FY18, the grant was set to expire. We told the people at DEP that was in charge of this grant what we had going on with Buffinville, and we asked them if we could continue the grant and use the remaining money, because there might have been like 80,000 or 100,000 left for FY19. They got back to us and said, yes, you can, we're going to extend it to FY19, and they started us with a fresh $200,000. So for FY, which we're currently in now, we've probably expended 170, Sue? We have 70 left for the $200,000 grant?
So waiting for Beta still.
Right, so we might have spent, say, 160 in FY19. I reached out to DEP again and asked if we could extend it to FY20. They got back to us and said yes, and they're starting us with a fresh $200,000 for FY20 as well. So I've been talking to Peter Newton from Bristol Engineering and Beta Engineering to talk about kind of the next steps of where we're gonna go from here. And that's why, when I talk about doing the roadway, I think, in talking to Beta and looking at what we have there for property and possibly doing a big cut to one of those hills to bring the elevation down 20 feet, all our gravel is sitting there. So rather than paying the truck gravel in and then have to get rid of our own gravel, I think we can be patient with that access road, work with Beta, get back in front of DEP, tell them where we're at, tell them what we're proposing, have Beta draw up, maybe talk about what our initial ideas are, and then get DEP on board, get the Army Corps on board, get yourselves on board, and then work with Beta, maybe do a full-blown site plan, get that roadway done, and just get that all done as part of this FY '20 grant cycle. Then we'll be ready, we'll have a good access road, the property will be ready, because in order to get a big enough truck up there to drill an 8-inch well, you're not gonna do it on a cart path, right? We're gonna need, and even where we're planning on drilling those 5 wells, it's all wooded, so we don't be, the well rig wouldn't even be able to get up there and really turn around at this time. So it kind of makes sense to do, you get the civil engineering work done, get the, somewhat final roadway in and done and ready to go, and then we have good access. We can look at what it'll cost us to do the actual well drilling, long-term pump testing, and that next phase. So that's my plan of attack now, is work with Beta, draw up, say, phase 1, 2, 3. Phase 1 being them doing the civil engineering work, phase 2 being maybe doing the actual land clearing and work and creating that access road, see what we have left for funding from the grant, and then see if we can maybe start working with drilling the wells, and maybe use some of our own money that we have from the ExxonMobil settlement to invest in there. But after we do some civil work, we might see that there's an abundance of material there, and do a selective tree harvest, and we sell some material, we might be able to generate enough revenue to fund the next step of drilling some wells on our own as well. So I'll have more information on that as I talk to Beta a little bit more, but that's kind of my initial train of thought with that right now, and where I'm trying to get, the direction I'm taking the public water supply well. So, it's good stuff. It's interesting. It's a nice piece of property. So again, the plan is to close on the Burns property by June 30th. The Phillips property, because it's part of the grant, is FY '20, so we'll get out there after July 1st, get it surveyed, because we have to break it apart, get in front of planning board and create both lots. And I believe the PNS has us closing on that by August 30th. So, both property owners have been kind enough to let us kind of do some work already on the property based on the existing agreement that we have, so things have been going pretty well so far. So, that's all I have.
Any other business unknowns at time of posting? If not, we'll listen to a final motion here.
The motion we adjourn.
Okay, our next meeting will be July 8th, and do I have a second on that?
Sure. Second.
That's it, we're out of here.
All right, thank you. And I'll have all this paperwork,
Aye.
bring this paperwork to Mary.